Welcome to Three, a part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. Novak Djokovic is through to his 10th career Wimbledon final, where he will rematch Carlos Alcaraz. Joel Drucker is with us from Wimbledon. Amy from her house, me from my apartment. Joel, I want to start with you. What is bullet point number one? What is the chief storyline if Djokovic gets this done tomorrow and wins Wimbledon, beating Alcaraz in the final?
Who needs a meniscus? I mean, just amazing to think where we were a few weeks ago. June 5th, he had surgery. Final's going to be played on July 14th. That is amazing that he's been able to do that. Just that he's gotten to the finals is incredible, and we'll delve into how all that happens. But the fact that he's in contention to win a 25th major, an 8th Wimbledon, all sorts of the data points. But I think just on its own, just the fact that he's in the finals and could well win it 5 weeks after having surgery, that's just staggering.
He really is a marvel of modern medicine. And New York Times had a great accounting of how he did his rehab exactly. And he did use the hyperbaric chamber, and he did consult the specialist that had worked with Richard Gasquet, a knee-specific rehab specialist. He got lucky with a favorable draw and Demonar, the walkover, so he got a few extra days of rest, but he also made his own luck. He made proactive moves to rehab this knee, and I think it really is an accomplishment.
It certainly is, and I'm just glad it's played out this way, considering, we didn't think Novak would be in the tournament in the first place. By the way, he also confirmed to Tennis Channel in an interview that it was indeed a meniscus removal, not a meniscus repair, which is essential in order to minimize the recovery time. Removal is much easier to recover from. I don't know if the knee for me, though, is as interesting or as big as the turnaround of the 2024 season at 37 years old. I think we were in a world where if you polled tennis fans, maybe tennis media, whatever, will Novak Djokovic win another major? The number of people who would have said no before Roland Garros or maybe after Roland Garros, significant, like substantial. Like there was real doubts about where is Djokovic at in his career right now? Have we reached the permanent decline? I think he will once again, and he's done this before, he will once again silence all of that kind of noise if he's able to beat Alcaraz on Sunday.
Well, he spoke tonight in his press conference about the way Wimbledon has sometimes helped kind of turn around his year, the life he's found in it, the way it energizes him. And it is be interesting for us to dive into each player's kind of second slam. We know Novak has won the Australian 10 times. Rafa, which is the slam that's kind of the other slam that energizes them. And this is Wimbledon. I mean, this is the one that Novak watched when he was 6 years old and saw Pete Sampras win it and so on. And so he gets renewal here. Remember in 2018 where he fell out of the top 20 and then he turned his year around and ended up finishing number one. So something about Wimbledon. And also I think Wimbledon is the most physically forgiving of the majors between the grass and the length of points. The French is the least, well, maybe the least forgiving, the most demanding.
Yeah.
Gil, you've talked a lot about motivation, and I like to talk about concrete things, but there really is something to motivation. And some people, including myself, by the way, are motivated by somebody telling you that you can't, or the prospect that you can't do something, because that type of personality says, oh, wait a minute, yes, I can. So I think the people saying that he was done, he won't win another slam, the motivation to be a superhero and recover like nobody has ever recovered before, that's motivating for him. These are factors that he needed to make this run in this tournament. And I do think motivation has played a large part.
Yeah, I agree. It reminds me so much of 2018, actually, where after the loss to Marco Cecchinato at Roland Garros, there were some alarm bells. and it was an emphatic silencing of the doubters, Amy, which is kind of what you're getting at with the win over Nadal in 5 sets in the semifinal in 18. And then was that Kevin Anderson in the final that year?
Yes, I was at Wimbledon that year, and it was Kevin Anderson in the final. Kevin Anderson, who won the epic Isner semifinal, 5-setter that went into deep overtime. Amy, I think you and I were here that year. We were at Wimbledon that year.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, but the Rafa semi was magnificent. And yeah, Novak created his opportunity, as he's done so many times.
Joel, what have you observed on the court as Djokovic has gone through opponent by opponent? It was Vit Kopriva, Jacob Fernley, Alexei Popyrin, Holger Rune, and then we'll go into more depth on the Musetti match. So hold off on the Musetti match, but I guess coming into today, how did you feel about what you were seeing from Novak?
Think you just see the streamlined efficiency of his game. I think there's watching a player on television, and watching a player practice, and watching him play at smaller tournaments. When you watch a player play at an event as significant as Wimbledon, you really see the efficiency, and even that doesn't do Novak justice. Kind of the beauty, kind of the beauty and the power of what he's able to do again and again, and the balance. I mean, I think his balance is just unbelievable. And as a player, I've worked a lot on balance over the years with this teacher of mine, and you just see that applied so well and how that plays out. And that really is the balance and posture that triggers the movement. When we talk about the movement and the Gumby and the agility, but to me, it's more the base that begins it, and the energy he draws from the ground is just. So I've been seeing that really smooth. I watched him practice a few times. I mean, always fun to watch players practice at Wimbledon. It's just everybody's the novelty of the grass and the and seeing the players treat it so significantly is just marvelous.
I think the matches, I mean, the first match was easy for him because even he said he didn't have to move that much. But the next few matches, I think he sort of played himself into form and played himself into his confidence, especially regarding the knee. And things got easier for him, not harder. I mean, this match today, which we'll talk about in a minute, seemed like possibly maybe the easiest one.
I think, yeah, I mean, he has been playing better and better. What stood out to me is the fact that he hasn't had to move all that much in his matches or defend all that much in his matches because he's been an offensive menace. He is so clinical with the spot serving and the +1 play and the net approaching. The idea that Djokovic, and I still hear these tropes, that Djokovic wants long rallies, that he wants physical rallies, that it's the toughness or the consistency or the defense. The idea that these are the things that are shining in his game. Like I think I even heard it today. Someone say, normally you would want Djokovic would want to play physical rallies. I think we're years past that. And at this point, if you look at how he played Popyrin and Rune and Musetti today, he is attacking them constantly. And the efficiency and the skill on display in terms of his effort to finish points on his terms is what has really stood out to me.
Hey, Musetti stat 43 of 56 at the net, including 16 of 17 serve and volley. And that's kind of building blocks. That's kind of an awareness of where he is with his age, and also maybe some things he might want to trot out against Carlos. Perhaps maybe in ways workable for him, different than Musetti, but still.
Wasn't it amazing to see the contrast with Fritz and Djokovic in terms of how to attack Musetti and what needs to be done?
Well, this is about skill building. I mean, I admire Taylor Fritz tremendously, but if you had ever told me that a player who is 6'5" from Southern California would have a great serve and be a reluctant net rusher, how's that possible? But it is. And Musetti, boy, I was at that match too. He completely unraveled Taylor in that match completely.
I thought Taylor really just struggled to get himself together mentally. And we all have days like that. after the first set, the first couple of setbacks that Fritz faced, he just couldn't, rally himself. What occurred to me is that Djokovic had called Fritz prior to the tournament to ask him about rehabbing the meniscus. And Fritz, being the good sport that he is, gave him some good advice and said, I think you can do it. If Fritz had been able to pull that match out, then they would have met, and that would have just been kind of a funny coincidence. But I didn't think Musetti played well from the baseline today at all. He really lacked answers for Novak's depth, and rally tolerance was not good, and not knowing what to do, when Novak came in. It was, despite some really good matches between the two of them in the past, it was a little disappointing, but a steamroll by Novak.
Well, the matchup though is interesting. There's the Musetti I call the flurry that's going to happen. It's going to happen. There'll be a period where he'll have this purple patch, as he did early in the second set, and he went up 3-1. He had an incredible backhand at 2-1 to break serve. And Novak admits that it's a little awkward because remember, most times Novak, what's his bread and butter shot? Cross-court backhand. Usually he does that to another two-hander, and soon enough he's the one on top because he's got a better backhand. But then Musetti can do things, and Novak in his press conference tonight spoke about the awkwardness of playing Musetti and how talented and kind of unpredictable and crafty, all the things for that certain kind of disruption. Nonetheless, I think Novak knows, yeah, I've got to work through this. And then we've gone 5 sets at Roland Garros twice, but look what Musetti has come up by the end of those matches. He's completely gone in Paris, and it was different tonight. It was 3 sets on grass, but yeah, there was a sense that Novak, once he got through that period in the second set, it was almost impossible to think it wasn't going to end in straight sets.
Musetti's been relying on his defense throughout the tournament, and players have really struggled, I think, to find a way through him, and they've really struggled with the extra balls. Like Giovanni Pericard, for example. His serve wasn't coming back the whole tournament. Musetti's got a great block return. He's going to get the balls back. He's going to run, and counter. And he couldn't play the balls. He couldn't finish the volleys on a consistent basis. And then Fritz was his own thing. But I just don't think playing as defensively as Musetti plays on grass, I don't think that's a pathway to beating Novak.
I'm going to take issue with something, though. I don't think Musetti beat Fritz on defense at all. I think he unraveled him. I think defense apply. We're going to have discussion forever about that. He's getting balls back. I think, and again, this is kind of gets to the Rodney Dangerfield of the slice backhand. That's offense. He is disrupting. He is using that to break down a technique. It's not offense in the way Novak's two-hander is, but he was doing things. He was not just kind of like retrieving and running. However, against Novak, it sure starts to look that way because Novak isn't such an easy guy to attack unless you're going to hit like ridiculous one-handers from 6 feet behind the baseline.
I think it can be both. I don't think slice has to be one or the other.
No, I just mean that I think that, like we've talked about this before, a transcendent language beyond offense
Right,
and
that
defense.
that he shouldn't be reduced to like that one category. He shouldn't be put in that box completely.
Novak wouldn't call him a defensive player. Novak would not call Musetti defensive. Novak would call him.
And I'm not right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he can't be attacking at times. I just think one of the things that has really bothered his opponents has been the quality of his defense.
Well, yeah, and I saw the other match too. Yeah, he knows how to get balls back in play, but then he's doing things. He's kind of building points. But I think against Novak, he said Novak just has too much depth and too much. And then look at all the greatness Novak was at the net today.
I mean, whether Musetti is offensive or defensive, the shot that he played so much today was the slice from the backhand side. And on grass, that can be offensive. The only problem with playing Novak is he's got a lot of practice against one-handed backhand slice, including Roger Federer. And, Musetti is not in that category.
I actually think that's a massive point. Like he's been on this court at Wimbledon needing to deal with Federer being a righty, hitting backhand slice cross courts, and like how much time has he spent figuring out what are the best things for me to do against that shot? to not be attacked and to try to use it to my advantage. So, I mean, I ended up going into detail breaking down the match on like what Djokovic was doing in response to that shot. I feel like he shut it down completely and it didn't help
Yeah.
Musetti. Another thing is Novak's serve and return. I think he's outserved and outreturned everybody in his path by such a wide margin here. And his serve continues to be really underrated to me. So that's one other thing I want to get in here. Um, let's move kind of towards the final, not getting there fully. Amy, what is the effect? I think what strikes me as a little bit different about this scenario, this lead up, is yes, Djokovic had an easier draw. That happens all the time. I mean,
Yes.
we can be adults about this. This is tennis. Sometimes hard draw, sometimes easy draw.
Yep.
Like this is how it is. What I think is actually pretty rare about the situation for Djokovic is he actually hasn't played that much top competition this year. Um, this is his third top 10 match of the year. He played Ruud at Monte Carlo, so that was back in April. That's the last top 10 player he's faced. Um, and then top 5, you have to go back to January against Sinner. So you combine the fact that it was a easier path, and if you look at his year, we haven't seen him go up against Alcaraz like talent in a long time, and we haven't seen it a lot this year. How do you think that affects things?
That's a fair point. I'll have to think about that when I'm writing my preview. You're right. And the speeds really are different. And Carlos is lightning quick, both in terms of reaction skills and foot speed. So fast twitch, slow pitch, twitch, muscles, big, small, he's got them all. So I think it might take a set or more for Novak to just adjust to the speeds, but we're not talking about serve speed. So I think he should still return really well. I wrote in my notes that because Carlos is using the drop shot so much as he did today, and Novak was using it as well, we could end up with a fair amount of pivotal 2-up at the net, both up, cat and mouse top type points, which makes for a very entertaining match. And then you can ask yourself, like, who plays these points better?
Well, that's going to be very interesting. It's interesting also. We got the back-to-back finals. The last time that happened 9 years ago was when Novak played Roger, and Roger was the 7-time champ, and Novak was pretty much the youngster, and they played in back-to-back titles in 14 and 15. I mean, Alcaraz is a whole other level of opponent for Novak than anyone he's played probably since Sinner in Australia this year. And so this is a whole other kind of match, and the speed will be in the foot speed and how if Novak feels he can compromise him or what tactics Novak is going to bring and all that. And I think it's obviously going to be very different than last year when we recall that Novak got off to a great start. And then the second was a tiebreaker, and that kind of began to change the flow of the match. And this when Novak then was also kind of at the height of his powers. He'd won the first 2 majors, and this is a very different kind of year. Now he went from being kind of the dominator to now he's kind of like the veteran. One more time. Let's see. I'm 37. Knee surgery.
Yeah, it certainly is a different situation. I think it makes it hard for anybody to know what to expect. I think that's the biggest thing here because normally I like to call it a measuring stick match. Like let's say Zverev was healthy and he was the semifinalist here. And yes, the resume isn't great on grass, but we were well aware of the level that Zverev brings at the end of majors. And if you can measure Novak and he could measure himself up against Zverev in the semis, we'd have a better idea, even though every match is different, we'd have a better idea of where he's at. And I think coming into this final, the mystery element is increased because of Djokovic's path, not including a lot of other top players.
Completely agree with you. That's right. Exactly. He hasn't been as emphatically tested as you would, even as the way he would have been tested versus a Taylor Fritz compared to, let's say, a Musetti. That's right.
What have you made of Alcaraz's matches, Joel?
Oh, it's just he's just kind of got off to a couple of slow starts the last couple of matches. Lost the first set in each of them against Tommy Paul and today against Medvedev. But it looks like you know he's kind of the veteran guy now, right? He's kind of experienced. He problem solves. I watched this whole the five setter with Tiafo was very exciting. That was tremendous, and he's I think we're seeing that the shot maker is also is really a problem solver. You know, the shot maker stuff belies the problem solving that he does. And I'm not a fan. I don't enjoy when some of our colleagues say, oh, look, he's going for it too much. He's risking too much. It's not reckless if you own it. And he's building the groundwork of those shots. This is the game. This is the full bodied game he plays that uses so many different shots. And I think I'm looking forward to this final too. Also, I mean, boy, he's got his stuff to do, trying to win the French and Wimbledon the same year. Uh, so young and trying to earn his fourth major. It's been impressive. You see, by the end of these matches, he's very in control. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say what Novak said after today's match against Musetti, which was that he's working smarter, not harder, which is one of my favorite expressions in tennis. And I think Alcaraz is still working hard, in his matches, whether it's what you were saying, like figuring his way out, Joel, or just physically working very hard. I still see him as a very instinctive type player, while Novak I see him playing specific patterns, like rally to Musetti's backhand and rally, exchange, and then bomb one to the open court to the forehand. I mean, like I saw him play that pattern in pivotal moments today a few times, or some of the patterns where he approaches and then finishes with the cut volley off the court. I don't see Carlitos playing these patterns. Maybe I just haven't been paying close enough attention or charting the matches as much. He just seems to be like flying by the seat of his pants, which works well for him. But there is that contrast there. And when Novak talks about how he plays very efficiently or he's playing smarter, not harder, I think that's where the contrast really becomes apparent.
Well, Novak is never, you never think of Novak as going through a youthful shot maker phase because he was
Mm-hmm.
always very disciplined. I remember when I saw him win his first Masters 1000 Miami in '07, and you could see already the signs of someone who knew, a certain discipline, just like his technique, just like his approach. I always think of that 5-year-old boy coming to his lessons. And I think Alcaraz, I don't think he's flying by the seat of the pants. I think he definitely has a vision. It's just a different kind of vision. I don't think he's just kind of, I mean, instinct, going for it. For a while, I was hearing some people talk. See, Sinner's got the pretty simpler game. He hits it, because Sinner's hitting cross court and hard and deep. And look at what's Carlos doing. I think he has a lot of things that occur to him and some patterns. He knows it's probably better to hit the ball cross court a lot. He can do that, but his vision of the court is based on the skills he's built. I mean, this to me, fascinating topic of how every player builds a playing style based on everything from where they live to who teaches them to who they happen to be and cause and effect. And yeah, this guy, I mean, he's just so broad in his vision of the game.
I think when he's clear-headed, the instincts are creative and he gets a lot of good ideas in his head, even if he didn't think of them before the point. Maybe he thought of it during the point. I think the challenge and something that Juan Carlos Ferrero has had to work through with him is it's when the instinct becomes harder, 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 and that's where he can get himself into trouble. Where I think the rawest level of Alcaraz is I am going to blast this thing and it's going to go into the corner and you're not going to touch it. And I think sometimes he can skip a couple steps. And I think the effort this year has been wait, high ball, loopy ball, low slice, let's move it here. It's set it up. I think set it up has been a big priority for Alcaraz, but that's what he did today against Medvedev. He said after the match, I don't want to play I didn't want to play long rallies. I wanted to mix it up. He threw in a lot of variety. He's been doing that in his, like Zverev at the French Open with the high balls. So I think the effort has been mix it up, but he can still play instinctively just as long as it's not everything's going to go Mach 8.
Well, and we're going to be seeing in the years to come. This is the thing that makes a player like Alcaraz so exciting is we know he's creating kind of a new paradigm of how it's played, just like the big three have in their ways. Like, what's this guy's deal? What are the shots he hits? And so we're going to be studying in the years to come what his metrics are, what his patterns are that are emerging. And right now, it still happens so quickly. I mean, with Alcaraz, was it? Let's see. I'm thinking 22 U.S. Open. So it's been less than 2 years since he won his first major, and he's won them on different surfaces in different places. That's pretty unprecedented in the history of the sport. I mean, we got used to the Rafa Roland Garros silo. 19, 20, 21. He's winning Roland Garros. He's the clay guy. Oh, look at him doing some Wimbledon. Carlos is doing these things concurrently.
Yeah, he's going to go for the career slam, the career Grand Slam next year. And he's going to be what, 22 when he does it, or still 21?
That's right. He's going to be going for the 22, I believe.
22. Yeah.
Like 21.
When's
21.
his birthday? I thought it was in the
03.
spring.
Yeah, his birthday's in Madrid.
So he will come to us. That's right. He will come to Australia, trying to earn the career slam by the time he's 21, which I'm pretty sure is unprecedented. I don't have it officially in my head right now, but I'm pretty sure that's unprecedented.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some of the keys to the match. I think for Alcaraz, since we're talking about him, we'll stay there for a sec. When he figures it out, when he clicks into place in a match and he's rolling and he's confident, it's just been an avalanche. And at some point in the best of 5 set format, every single time it's happened at some point. And I think you need to take away that shot making and that athleticism by kind of just taking the rhythm out of the match completely. So I feel like for me, if they're going to play a lot of long points, I like that for Alcaraz. I think he's going to come through those with the power from the back of the court and the speed and the scrambling and the touch. But where Djokovic finds his advantage, in my opinion, is the serve and the return. And if he can set himself up in better positions behind his serve and get some cheap points as well, versus against Alcaraz, actually be offensive with his return and just never let Alcaraz settle into a lot of these points, find some breaks of serve that way. That is my simple kind of breakdown for how the match plays out. What do you guys think?
Well, Alcaraz said, though, that he wasn't wanting to play long points against Medvedev. Why would he want to play long points against Djokovic?
I don't know if it's wanting to play long points, but it's like once the point gets to neutral, I think he has an advantage over Djokovic.
Well, remember also Djokovic is older than Medvedev considerably, so that would make him want to play longer points to grind Novak.
I don't think it. I guess I just want to answer it further. Alcaraz wants to, like, if he can hit a serve and volley and win the point with the serve and volley, or a serve plus one winner, that's great. Obviously, you take that. I just think there's going to be a slice of points that are neutral and where the rally has developed past the serve return. And I think Alcaraz will be the better player in those situations, whereas Djokovic has an opportunity early in the point, in my opinion, to use a serve advantage and a return advantage.
This may have to be the most. I'm sorry, Amy, go on.
I just don't like while we're on this topic, I don't like that the length of rally is even in his head. Like Federer
Well, it's in
said,
my head, to be clear.
yeah, but it's in his head because he was talking about it. I mean, which is, it's kind of rare that players talk about rally length in a post-match interview. That's something for us nerds to dissect later. But like Federer said, with every point, you've got to be willing to play a long point every time you step up to the line. So I'm not wild about that thought being in his head, because that might cause him to use the dropper earlier than maybe is wise. And that's a thing to watch. Like, is that drop shot working for Alcaraz? Like, is he really feeling it or not? There were at least two today, I think, that nicked the net. I mean, it could have been gone either way, but he did have it rolling today, and then that is totally disrupting for the guy on the other side because not only does it disrupt his tempo, and Djokovic does like tempo, but it also exhausts him to have to keep chasing those down. So I think that's a big key, and also Carlos's other means of disruption. Are they working? His forehand. Some of his forehands were sailing early in today's match, but he was able to calibrate it and dial it in. I think those are things to watch with Alcaraz to see if it's going to be a really competitive match or not.
This may have to be the most tactically innovative slam final Djokovic has played because he's played before. He's played guys. He knows the deal, but he has to execute with them. And there's so much that's uncertain with Alcaraz. Not uncertain as far as how well he's going to play, but his wider range of things that he's going to do. And then what's Novak going to do to not counter that, to initiate that? I mean, that's why I think this coming to net thing is interesting. I'm not saying he's going to go Patrick Rafter against Carlos Alcaraz. I'm just saying he's going to look for ways to kind of control the points because against someone like Alcaraz, if you don't do that, he'll control you in ways. And I don't know. I'm really curious to see how Novak comes to net. I mean that Cincinnati final last year was a real gem. That's one of the command performances of Novak's career. It makes me think of a story I wanted to write where I wanted to take great players and find two or three of their best non-slam efforts.
I
Non-slams.
just watched highlights of that match to remind me what went on. An interesting thing that I saw in the highlights, this is just very anecdotal. And I saw it also today, and I've seen it in a couple of Alcaraz's matches. During a long extended rally, say over 4 or 5 shots, sometimes after hitting a number of cross-court forehands or just forehands, drive, topspin, whatever you want to call it, forehands, Alcaraz in the middle of the rally will go to a slice forehand. And I think sometimes he does that when he's tired, actually. And it's not when he's pushed. It's not like an extreme defense. It's like just in a normal. And then if the rally is extended, he'll go back to driving it again. But I just thought that was an interesting like little tell. Like if you see Carlitos just suddenly go to the slice forehand, maybe attack, because it could be a little sign that he's catching his breath. And I
That
saw that in that Cincinnati match in the highlights.
wasn't that like 3:49 long or something for a 3-set match? I remember. I think we were going to tape something and we are waiting for it to end. I mean, I just remember it was it's quite an effort.
It was unbelievably physical, and Alcaraz cramped in his hand in the final set tiebreak, and it was a big deal. And because it happened so late in the match, I don't think it has the legacy that the Roland Garros semifinal has, where Alcaraz cramps really early on and it's really bad and it totally hijacks the match. But that was another example there. I don't think that is in the equation this time. I don't think Novak is going to even want it to get that physical to the point where that's a possibility.
No, nor need he have to. Even though this is slower grass than it used to be, it's still grass. And Novak, I think again when I see him 16 of 17 serving and volleying versus Musetti, that's pretty good and frequent and 43 of 56 overall aim.
I have a question for you guys. Who do you think is like if you had to put your house on the better volleyer, like volley to save my house? Who is the better volleyer at this point?
Oh, you mean Alcaraz or Novak?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
That's a good question. Or maybe the question is who's the better net rusher? Who sequences it
The
best?
whole
Oh,
net game. Yeah.
I think I kind of like Alcaraz there right now because I think he sees it. He kind of Novak, we've seen him year after year, so we have all this data for Novak. So Alcaraz is still a pretty new phase, but I think his appetite for it and awareness of it is somewhat better. I don't know, maybe. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I've been saying Alcaraz is the best volleyer in the game. I think he takes my number one spot. I think he's a better difficult volley maker than Novak. I think Djokovic is so reliable on the easier volleys, but Alcaraz has a little bit of a magic to him that I think Novak lacks at the net. And the drop volleys from Alcaraz, and I'm a huge drop volley advocate and believer. I think it is the volley in singles to finish points with in the modern game, and I think Nadal has even proven that. And I think Alcaraz's drop volleys are a little shorter on average and just a little better with the touch.
And he's a little more comfortable.
Novak hit some very good drop volleys in today's match. I was really impressed. I would go, by the way, I'd go with Alcaraz too, just because of the hands, the quickness of the hands, like we were talking about before, in the cat and mouse exchanges where you've really got to like get creative and go behind you and do things that you maybe don't practice all the time. Alcaraz, maybe because of his youth, might be just a little better.
He also, I think he learned to be there in that territory at a younger age a lot more than Novak. So you could see that and my belief is if a player isn't that comfortable in the net area by the time they're 15, it's going to always be like a second or even third language to them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I am torn enough on this final that I don't really feel like making a prediction on this show, but I will on my channel. I will leave the floor open to either of you if you want to, and it doesn't need to be winner, but if Amy, you want some last words on the match, maybe you make a call, maybe you don't.
I don't want to predict, but I will just point out for the record that Gill picked Novak to win the tournament pre-tournament, and I picked Alcaraz to win the tournament pre-tournament. Don't know if we still feel that way. Just thought I'd state it for the record.
I remember I did for my tennis.com. I'm trying to remember who I even picked. I suspect I picked Alcaraz, but I forget who I had him beating in the finals. I have to look at that. Sorry, it's late.
No worries.
It's okay. It is late, and it's such a perfect, intriguing final. One thing that I said is, I'm a fan of combat sports in general, and I dabble in some UFC. And in that sport, you get to choose the matchups, and there are rare cases where you do an immediate rematch. A fight happens, and you say, the next fight is the same fight. We're doing it again. And all I could think about is if tennis worked that way after last year's Wimbledon final, they would have made an immediate rematch. And we're getting it.
And we wouldn't have to go through all the...
All right, Dana White. Let's go. Let's go. Bring Dana White to tennis.
I like it.
I don't think we want that, Joel. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. We appreciate it if you leave a rating and a review on Apple. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.